and it looks like it's going. Hi everyone, TigerHawk23 here. Today is the day for coding, and I have a little bit, sort of. It's about the loot parser, and why am I revisiting this, you ask? Because it has a bug. It's kind of a, not like a, why didn't I think of that, but how did I find it? I found it by using the program, parsing my logs. It was generally fine until at one point one log file wouldn't work. It would crash with a Unicode decode error. Unicode. So what happened was I was in zone at some point, probably flying around doing my Star Trek paperwork, duty officers, etc. And while I was there, people were, chatting in zone chat. That's what it is. That's what it's for. And someone was saying stuff in Russian with Cyrillic characters. That's not ASCII or ANSI, as Windows calls it. It's kind of a mess as far as text encoding. When we say encoded, we mean it. It's in code, and it depends on agreeing on what code to use. Because at its base, it's just a series of bytes, zeros and ones. And text is just, let's agree that this particular sequence of zeros and ones means some certain letter or whatever. If you only stay within ASCII, or like 128 characters, you're generally okay. But those characters are like A through Z in capital and lowercase, and numbers, dash, underscore, semicolon, standard things that you'd see on an English language keyboard. Cyrillic characters are not some of those things. We had things in our loot parser, we had logs that included log boxes opened by people using the German client, which means they could have different characters that English does not use, such as A with umlaut. English doesn't do that, and that produced errors when we tried to print it. But when we tried to read it, it was just fine. But the Cyrillic characters produced in the logs, in the log file for Star Trek Online, are somewhere high up in Unicode, and it gave an error when just trying to read the file. When I managed to isolate it, I had a bit of an interesting time finding it, because first I had to find which one was broken, and the way that the little progress bar works is processing file 1 of whatever, and then remember it backspaces to the beginning of the line, or it puts a carriage return, so it would start processing the one with the error in it, and then put a carriage return, and then it would print the error message. And the specific file with the problem would not be visible, wouldn't know which one it was. And so I eventually started processing backwards. I'd be like, okay, let's look at the last log file. Can I populate this? Yes. How about the second to last? Can I populate all these? Yes. So on and so forth until I found the one with the problem. And then I started just opening that log file in an interactive session, and all I had to do was open this file as F, for line in F, pass. That was all. Or, L equals list F. Don't print anything, just go through each line of the file, and it would produce an error. So that was interesting. Couldn't handle it at all. What I did then was I used enumerate to add basically line numbers to each line of the file, and then tried that again. Put the whole thing into try except and say, iterate through it, and if you see an exception, then break, and afterward print the line number that was saved, because for loops do not have their own scope. As a simple example, for I in range 3, pass, and then afterward, after the loop is all done, print I, and you will get 2. So I got a line number, and I looked at that line number in the file, and I'm like, I don't see the problem. Started cutting out bits and pieces that were fine to isolate it. Eventually I realized that the way Python reads files isn't exactly one line at a time. It reads like a predetermined block of bytes, and then it yields one line at a time. So it gave me line 440 something, and it was several lines after that particular line number. So it had read, this line, and then tried to get the next block of stuff, and failed. So eventually I found it, and I saw, there's nothing wrong here, there's nothing wrong here. Several lines down, oh, Russian. So Star Trek Online does not have a Russian language client, but you can paste Russian characters into the chat window and send those chat messages for the server and have them displayed, and then it will break the parser. So what I had to do was actually a very small fix. I just had to specify the encoding when reading the file in the main module in get logs. So here, when we open this file, I specified an encoding of UTF-8 sig, which is similar to UTF-8, but the sig means that it's a little better at detecting file encodings in Windows, I believe, something like that. It's slightly safer to use, basically. If you don't think you'll need it, you can remove the stuff, the -sig. I kept it in there because why not? So we have that, and there's another open down here, and we add encoding equals UTF-8 sig to say it's UTF-8 specific encoding instead of just the default, which is ASCII, and then it worked fine. If you want, you can add this these 2 tiny changes to your module that you're using if you have the source. If not, I'm gonna try to package the new version up into an executable. I don't know if this is being used at all, so my priority for this is pretty low. If you would really like an executable with this, comment saying, could I get that new executable? I plan on having a lot of Cyrillic characters in the chat logs. And then I'll increase its priority. Move that higher up in the pipeline, or further back, higher up, earlier, somewhere. It will happen earlier than it otherwise would have. And again, it's only a problem if you have these characters in your chat log, and if you do get a Unicode encode or Unicode decode error, sorry, when you're just trying to populate the logs, not even print anything, look for Cyrillic characters. You can probably go on like Wikipedia or something and get a whole list of the Cyrillic alphabet, and search your log files for that. For example, in Notepad++ or something. And we're going to find, here's your, let's say we're looking for ABC instead of whatever Russian characters you were looking for. And it would be this, and you would have a regular expression. So that means any of these characters. The square brackets denote a, not a group. I don't remember what that's called. Don't remember what it's called at all. Let's look it up. Cause I wanna matches any characters. I don't know. It says what it does. Square brackets. What does that mean? That's character class. There we go. Character class. That's what it is. Easy, of course. I knew that. So square brackets mean a character class, which means any of the characters that are in here. And so you just put your Cyrillic characters in there, and you find next. See? It found a B right here. And, oh, you can't see the find and replace window is separate. You will look for the expression ABC, whatever. So your square brackets denote a character class, and you just put in all the characters that you want to find, and anytime it finds any of those characters, it will, highlight them when you search, and you can, if you want to save a backup of that log with the original Cyrillic characters, you can do that, or you can just delete the entire line, maybe, or replace the characters if you want, or go to Google Translate and put in an approximate English translation or something, or French or German or whatever you want, and then it should parse fine. So that covers each case. If you have the source, you can make those changes, or I will push those to the GitHub repository, hopefully tonight. And if you have the packaged executable, and you want to, be ready for Russian text in the chat logs, let me know in the comments. And I will make that happen sooner rather than later, because at the moment I don't think it's a very big concern. But yeah, specify an encoding because Russian characters. That's it. It was fun finding out what was going wrong. And by fun, I mean Unicode, not fun. But that's all I had to do. Specify an encoding, and then it realizes that the Russian characters are Russian characters, and it can handle them. It doesn't actually do anything with them. It just needs to be able to read the file. And this will allow it to do that. Encoding here, and there. That's it. Tomorrow is a game streaming day. Don't know if there's going to be, but there's lots of potential stuff. Maybe I'll think of a retro game, not our Marines, because I already did part 2 of that, and I'm done with that game. And by done, I don't mean I beat it. I mean I'm done playing it. I'm not going to play it anymore. It's bad. Maybe LOL or Dota 2, or some Steam game. There is a Humble Bundle right now for 3 days only, a short one. The Neo Geo Encore bundle. It's over 24 Neo Geo games, plus a soundtrack, a bunch of soundtracks, and the highest level the highest tier package, is $10 for all those games. So that's what, 40 cents a game? Something like that. It's very inexpensive. Granted, they are like Metal Slug and stuff from, you know, the 90s and a bunch of older games. Actually, instead of Steam links or a download or something, it let me play them in the browser. Granted, I wish it would have been an actual port rather than the slightly glitchy browser-based implementation that we got. Some problems with audio and stuttering, which makes it less pleasant to play, I can tell you that. But it's pretty cool. It's cheap, and only 3 days, so if you delay, it will not be there. And there will be a new bundle. There's generally multiple at a time. One of them is going away tomorrow morning, and presumably being replaced by another one. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll find out. So, thanks for joining me and listening to what to do about Cyrillic characters in your file. Specify an encoding when you open it. That's it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.